So this is going to be a video about News 12 not reporting the local news that they're supposed to report, but I did see this brand new work locomotive today passing through Mineola. That's something the news isn't going to talk about, but it looks like a brand new work locomotive passing through Mineola on the main line today, so it was good. But News 12, I tell you, we had a lot of things going on in Long Island today. News 12 is pushing a political agenda, and in this video I'm going to really rant about this because it's getting out of hand. It really is. Here is Stone Grissom, who likes to, Stone, you should be on CNN. People don't want to hear about this shit. This is not local news. What they're covering? The immigration crisis. They spent most of the news talking about how all the families are being separated. They don't tell you that the families cross the border illegally, do you? No, they don't tell you that. They don't tell you that. They don't talk about the crime, the gangs. No, they don't talk about that. What they talk about is pushing a political agenda in favor of illegal immigrants. And I'm tired of it. I really am. They've always been like this, but it's really getting out of hand now. It feels like I'm watching CNN. And if it's not the political agenda, it's covering what Trump did today. And Trump is actually there talking about all the crimes that the illegals were committing. So he talks a lot about the crimes, but they're still here. And the news is not saying, well, why are they still here? He said they were going to be gone on day one, and yet they're still here. They're still doing crime, and we're going to talk about that later in this video. All right, News 12 missed a major crime today. All right, so they have their little fancy immigration crisis little thing there that they put up, trying to push their agenda, pro illegal immigration. Here's one of those snobby white people protesting against enforcing the law. It's ridiculous is what it is. Here we go again. And it's funny. It's always white people protesting. Why do they care so much? They don't have to deal with the crime, the gangs. They live in those lily white neighborhoods. But that's because they want somebody to mow their lawn, right? Right, exactly. The news isn't going to tell you that either because they're just pushing an agenda. That's what they're doing. And I'm sorry, I've seen these freaking snobby white people in front of the camera all the time. And then Cuomo. Talking about Cuomo, they cover Cuomo too. It feels like a mouthpiece for all the News 12 is becoming a mouthpiece for the snobs, basically. Cuomo, he cares more about illegal immigrants, but he doesn't care about all the New Yorkers suffering with public transportation problems, or the people who are mentally ill like me who can't get therapy because you're cutting funds to all the clinics. Nah, he doesn't care about the U.S. citizens in the state. He cares more about illegals. But News 12 isn't going to tell you that either. No. They're not going to tell you that either. So there we go again with that big fancy graphic. You can see, look at the bar on the bottom. White House. It's always about the national world news. Pushing an agenda. That's what they're doing. They're pushing an agenda, News 12. And here we go again. More about Trump. Threatens to slam 20% tariff on cars from the European Union. Oh, how does that affect Long Island? Oh, the snobs. They love those German cars, like the Audis, the Mercedes, the BMWs. So, of course, they're going to be upset about it. See what I told you? News 12 is news for snobs. Let's talk about some of the things, a major story that News 12 actually missed today. Let's talk about that right now. So here's a major story that News 12 missed, and this was one of several stories that News 12 missed today. Then we're going to talk about News 12 missing this story here. So these two guys, probably illegals, and I'll say why in a minute. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but these guys tried to rob somebody in Freeport, and they got into a car with Tennessee plates. They almost always have out-of-state plates, which is a dead giveaway that they are illegals because New York State does not give illegals driver's licenses. So they're always from states that do, like Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina, Texas. I think there's another state that I see a lot of, Connecticut. And this story, News 12 didn't cover it at all. And if we go to their thing here on their page, you'll see that we'll go over some of the stories they talked about. There was a story, a couple in Nisqually River State Park was robbed, and they spent like 5 seconds on it, and the story is not even up here on the page. So they don't want people knowing about the crime that's going on. They don't want people knowing about the crime. You can see there's a lot of national news here, even in this here. Trump, they spent 5 seconds on this story with the fire. They spent 30 seconds on this story. This one they didn't even cover. They spent maybe 1 minute on that, but they spend most of the time talking about national news and pushing an agenda, a pro-illegal immigrant agenda on News 12. That's what News 12 is becoming. Altice is, very to the left, and they're pushing their agenda even more. If you thought News 12 was to the left before, it's even worse now. And they're not covering what's affecting us. They didn't even talk about the train problems last night. And people are starting to notice this. And this is why we need to talk up about this. I don't know if the FCC can do anything, but Altice is going to eventually phase out News 12 and turn it into I-24 local. That's what I'm telling you is going to happen. It's all about Trump, and they're not really covering what's important to people on Long Island. Instead, they're pushing some kind of political agenda, and we don't put on the news for that. So from what I remember in the story, because I can't find anything about it on News 12's website because they don't want us to know about it, or, this is what goes on with crime on Long Island. It doesn't get reported because certain groups of people don't want it getting out. But what they spent 5 seconds on was, and this is concerning to me as somebody who goes into parks and likes to hike, is that a couple was in, I think it was Nissaquag River State Park. It was somewhere in this area, one of these parks. I think it was Nissaquag River. I don't know if they were actually robbed or there was an attempted robbery, but very disturbing in a park to have that happen. And you'd think the news would be all over it, but they're not all over it. And this is the problem. The News 12 in particular, is not reporting on what affects people on Long Island. We don't give a shit about Trump. We don't give a shit about illegal immigrants. What we care about is what's going on Long Island, what's affecting us in our communities. We don't care what's happening around the world. We put on News 12 to get local news. But instead, News 12 would rather push some stupid political agenda gearing to people like this. She has been protesting Peter King. She's very supportive of illegal immigrants, she doesn't have to live with them. She doesn't have to live with them, so she doesn't care. And I'm sick of the. This is another thing, but I'm sick of the freaking political bias on the news already. All right. I don't put on the news to hear a bunch of lily-white, snobby people whining about how much they need illegal immigrants for cheap labor, because that's really what it's all about. All right, that's why they want them here. It has nothing to do with the rights of the immigrants and whatnot. It has to do with the cheap illegal labor, so they can keep paying them to mow the lawns cheap and hire them for all these jobs that Americans used to do because they want to. They don't have to deal with the crime. They don't have to deal with the gangs. They don't have to deal with the overcrowding in their communities. It's on someone else's community, usually a community of color, that has to deal with it. And that's why these people really piss me off. But that's a whole other subject. But I'm sick of seeing this agenda being pushed on News 12. So people have to speak up about this, because this is a violation of what our airwaves are supposed to be about. So here's a little refresher course for all the folks at News 12 as to what they should be doing, what their job's supposed to be. And this goes for any other local TV station. This is what they should be covering on the local news. Things that happen in the broadcast area. Crime in the broadcast area. Transportation issues in the broadcast area. That would include Long Island Railroad disruptions, traffic accidents, etc. Corruption and local politics in the broadcast area. Yes, local politics. I haven't seen much coverage at all about the various races going on locally in the New York State legislature, as well as the governor. Haven't seen anything about that. Environmental stories. I mean, pollution, things that have happened in the Pine Barrens. You haven't seen anything about that. I don't know what happened with that act to transfer land into Edgewood Preserve. I don't know, because the news never reported it. Then weather and sports, and then, lastly, limited national and world news. But that's it. That's what you should be covering when you're running your local newscast, whether it be News 12 or New York City station or whatever. That's what you should be covering. And this is what the Federal Communications Commission should be enforcing, because they're supposed to be serving the interest of the community. And right now, News 12 is not serving the interest of Long Islanders. They're serving the interest of Altice. Instead of getting what we should be getting, we get this. Like today, for instance, we're just going to go over, well, this is typically almost every News 12 newscast this entire week. Politically biased news in favor of illegal immigrants. Usually, talking about how it's wrong to enforce the law. They interview people like all the people that favor illegal immigration, on the news, talking about the families being split up, blah, blah, blah. No one, they don't even interview people who say they broke the law. No one says that. No one says that. Number two, whatever Trump did and tweeted today, whatever he did, whatever he was around the world, they're going to talk about it, and they're going to talk about what he said on Twitter. New fancy gadgets that cost a lot. Yeah, that stupid technology segment they have with some fancy devices that only rich people, the rich snobs need and can afford. And then the limited local news stories. And they usually only give about 90 seconds for the biggest local news stories, such as the chemical incident that happened at the Ramada and Rockville Center today. All other local news stories get about 5 to 30 seconds, and that's it. And then weather and sports. So that's what they're really covering. And this is what we're getting. They're not serving the best interest of the community. They're serving their own political agenda. And we need to take back the news, folks. We need to take back the news. And as far as Altice goes, Altice is out to destroy News 12. It's bad enough when they merged all the News 12s, and I've told you before that if you don't know, folks, if you're getting News 12 Connecticut or your news is actually being produced in New Jersey, all right, because they closed the Connecticut office and they filmed the News 12 Connecticut out of New Jersey studios. And if you're watching News 12 in Westchester County and the Hudson Valley, your News 12 is being filmed on Long Island at the Long Island studios in Woodbury. So they've managed to close a lot of the local News 12s, therefore turning their back on the public interest. But these companies can do whatever they want. There's no oversight, and they continue to do whatever they want and not serve the public. And we need to hold them accountable. All right. As far as Altice goes, you have violated people on Long Island, all right, and people in Westchester, and people in Connecticut, and people in New Jersey, because nobody really cares about what you're talking about. That's why. And you're destroying what once was a world, almost a national, I'll say national. News 12 was once a very successful news operation, but it is being destroyed by you. All right, just like these guys, Transdev, all right, just like Nice Bus. They're doing, and they're both French companies too. They're both, they cut costs. They ruin everything. They ruin everything, and they're a foreign company running something that's in America. And I have a big problem with that. And Trump was supposed to put a stop to this, but you can see Trump has turned his back on everybody. But this isn't going to be about Trump because we hear enough about him on the news. All right. This is going to be about taking back our media, News 12 in particular, all right? We need to hold them accountable. You call yourself News 12 Long Island. Well, why don't you start reporting on local news like you're supposed to, all right? If we want to hear about Trump and political bias, we have CNN, we have Fox, we have MSNBC, we have all these other national news channels, all right? You have one job. Cover the local news. You say you're as local news gets. Well, you need to start being as local news gets and stop lying to people, because nobody on Long Island gives a damn about most of what you're talking about right now. All right? And you need to get back to the job you used to do before Altice took you over. And if Altice doesn't want to do that, News 12, you know what? There are other people who can run News 12. There are other news organizations out there, like the Hearst organization, who happens to run some very fine newscasts across the country. Maybe Hearst should run News 12. But let's keep News 12 for Long Island, because Long Island does not even have its own news station. All right? You're the only thing we got. You need to do the job that you're supposed to do and report on local news. Not about Trump, not about illegal immigrants, not what's going on halfway around the world. Local news that happens here on Long Island that affects Long Islanders. Do your freaking job.